My sister told me I wasn't family, just a wallet. Then she kicked me out of the house I paid for. My mom took her side and said I owed them. So I sold the house. Now they're calling me cruel, but I've got zero regrets. But before, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, as it's the best way to support this channel. I never thought the people I loved most, my own family, would be the ones to use me. But here I was, standing in an empty house that drained my savings, wrecked my relationships, and nearly broke me. Not even 3 months ago, I bought a property, not for myself, but for my younger sister, Megan. A 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood outside St. Paul. Hardwood floors, granite counters, a small yard where her future kids could someday play. Nothing fancy, just warm, livable. Exactly what Megan and her boyfriend Caleb claimed they needed to start their life. I fronted $108,000, not the full purchase, but enough for the down payment, closing costs, and legal fees. It was money I'd saved for my own goals. Gone in one transfer, one signature. But it wasn't my idea. My parents had worn me down, day after day. Family takes care of their own, my dad would say on repeat every time I hesitated. Megan needs this, Lucas. My mom would sniffle, always on the verge of tears. Don't you want your nieces and nephews to grow up in a good home? Every call, every dinner, every weekend turned into another guilt campaign. They painted Megan like some selfless saint who'd always been there for me, even though that was a lie. After 6 weeks of nonstop pressure, I gave in, wired the funds, signed the paperwork, and no one said thank you. On move-in day, I showed up with a bottle of sparkling cider and a potted plant. Nothing extravagant, just something thoughtful. Megan barely looked at it. Thanks, she muttered. Caleb didn't even glance up. They were too busy bossing the movers around. I hung around awkwardly for 15 minutes, in a house I technically co-owned, waiting for someone to offer a drink, a tour, anything. Nothing. I'll let you two get settled, I finally said. Megan was still looking at her phone. Yeah, lots to do. She didn't even walk me out. I told myself they were just overwhelmed, that the gratitude would come later. 3 days later, I got a text from my cousin Tasha. Last night at Megan's was such a blast. That house is beautiful. My stomach sank. I opened Instagram, and there it was. Photo after photo of the housewarming party. My parents were there. My cousins. Everyone. Toasting. Smiling. A home sweet home banner hung behind them in the living room I'd paid for. And I hadn't been invited. My hands shook as I scrolled. My dad giving a toast. My mom hugging Megan in the kitchen. Caleb flipping burgers out back. Everyone looked happy. Everyone except me. I called Megan immediately. Hey, she answered, like I was bothering her. You threw a party? It was just a small get-together. Looked like half the family was there. Pause. It was kind of last minute, she said. We didn't think you'd care. That hit harder than anything else. I hadn't been forgotten. I wasn't wanted. I paid for that house, Megan. She laughed. Cold. Sharp. There it is. Knew you'd bring that up eventually. I'm not asking for applause, I said. Just a little acknowledgement. Maybe even an invite to the celebration I made possible. God, you're pathetic, she snapped. What? Did you do this so you could hold it over us forever? So we'd owe you for life? Her voice turned razor sharp. Here's a reality check, Lucas. Money doesn't buy respect, or a permanent place in our lives. If mom and dad guilt you into paying, that's your burden, not ours. We never begged. Except they did. All of them did. I hung up in silence. That night, I pulled out the paperwork. Mortgage statements. Contracts. The title. My name was still there. I had signed. I had paid. I was legally still on everything. They hadn't refinanced. They hadn't even tried. By sunrise, I knew what I was going to do. I called a real estate consultant, laid out the facts. She told me what I already hoped. I could sell the property. Messy? Yes, but doable. I still had the legal power. I sent Megan a message. The house is being listed. You have 30 days to vacate. The fallout was instant. My phone exploded with calls, messages, voicemails. Megan screamed at me. Caleb threatened lawyers. My parents rotated between begging and guilt-tripping. You're heartless. This is your sister. You were raised better than this. I blocked every number. 2 days later, they showed up at my apartment. My mom sobbing. My dad red-faced. Megan with her arms folded, jaw clenched. You've got to stop this madness, Dad growled. I let them in, but I didn't offer a seat. No water. No smiles. I wanted them to feel what I'd felt, like an outsider in something I helped build. This isn't madness, I said. My name's on the deed. I'm selling. But we're your family, Mom whispered. How can you do this to your own sister? Ask her, I said, staring straight at Megan. Ask her how she treated the brother who gave up everything for her. Ask her why she shut me out the second she got what she wanted. It was just a stupid party, Megan muttered, eyes locked on the floor. It's never been about the party, I I replied. It's about knowing I meant nothing to you, except as a bank account. That's not fair, Dad started. None of this has been fair. I snapped. You all spent weeks pressuring me, making me feel like dirt for even thinking about saying no. And once I gave in, once I handed over almost 100 grand, I was forgotten. We thanked you, Mom mumbled. No, you didn't, I said. Not once. The silence afterward said it all. They hadn't even realized they hadn't thanked me. The house goes up for sale next week, I said, stepping aside and pointing to the door. You should leave. Dad's face hardened. If you go through with this, he said quietly, then you're not part of this family anymore. I laughed. Bitter. Flat. I haven't felt like part of this family since the day I signed those papers. The only thing that's changed now is that I see everything for what it is. After they left my apartment, I sat alone, just me and the silence. And for the first time in a long while, the weight pressing down on my chest finally began to lift. I had lost the people I once called family, but in that loss, they revealed who they truly were. Maybe the truth was worth the cost. The next few weeks were chaos, documents, contracts, endless calls with real estate agents and lawyers. Megan and Caleb did everything they could to stop the sale. First came the guilt trips, then the fake apologies, then the threats. When none of that worked, they lashed out. They trashed the house, put holes in the walls, stained the floors, destroyed anything they could on their way out. And my parents? They kept their word. They cut me off completely. I was erased from the family group chat, blocked on Facebook, ignored on every platform. I didn't get invited to holidays or birthdays. Cousins and relatives who once smiled at me while standing in the living room I paid for now looked away like I didn't exist. Only one person reached out. Tasha, my cousin, sent a single message. I get why you did it. I'm sorry it had to end like this. That was the only trace of empathy in a sea of judgment. Because of the rush to sell and the damage left behind, I didn't recover everything I put in. Out of the $108,000 I had spent on that house, I got back around $85,000. That missing $23,000? That was the price I paid to find out who my family really was. Painful? Yes, but a lesson I'll never forget. It's been about 3 months since everything happened. I'm rebuilding, bit by bit, trying to regain what I lost, financially and emotionally. Some nights, I still wake up questioning myself. Could I have done things differently? Could I have walked a softer path? But then I hear Megan's voice in my head. Her flat, emotionless laugh. The words she said to cut me down. Money doesn't earn you respect. And in that, she was absolutely right. Because I've learned something hard and clear. There are people who will keep taking from you, draining your time, your savings, your peace, until there's absolutely nothing left. People who weaponize the word family to manipulate, to guilt, to control. People who claim to love unconditionally, but who have terms and conditions buried in every interaction. And through it all, I've come to understand something I wish I'd realized sooner. Dignity is worth more than money, and it's the only thing truly worth sacrificing for. To anyone who's stuck in a similar trap, torn between financial security and emotional freedom, this is what I want you to know. You can rebuild a bank account, but you cannot get back the time, the energy, the self-worth wasted trying to earn love from people who only saw you as a resource. I don't regret the money I lost. What haunts me is how long it took to realize what I was really buying. And it wasn't a home. The signs were there long before the collapse. Late that summer, something about Megan felt off. She had always been our parents' golden child, the one who did everything right. College, marriage, career, all exactly how they envisioned. Me? I was the black sheep. Chose a trade over a degree. Started my own business. Took a different road. But even golden children lose their shine. At Dad's birthday dinner, I noticed Megan and Caleb exchanging strange glances, like they were avoiding something. When Mom asked about their 5-year plan, they danced around the question. Megan's smile looked forced. Caleb's jaw tensed when Dad brought up their lease ending. We're thinking about buying soon, Megan said, almost like it was an afterthought, while picking at her dessert. Dad lit up. That's great news. Any neighborhoods in mind? Cooper's Grove, Caleb said. It's quiet. Safe. Mom clapped her hands. Perfect place to raise a family. But I noticed Megan's knuckles turn white around her fork. Something wasn't right. I didn't know it then, but that dinner was the start of a slow, calculated push. I was already being moved into position. 2 weeks later, Mom called. Her tone was soft. That fake sweetness she only used when she wanted something. Have you spoken to your sister lately? I hadn't. Megan and I never really bonded. A 4-year age gap and years of parental favoritism kept us at arm's length. Why? I asked. Mom sighed dramatically. They're in a tight spot. The home they've found is just barely out of reach financially. They're struggling with the down payment. I went quiet. The walls were already going up. That's unfortunate. I said carefully. She hesitated, choosing her next line. Your father and I were just saying, you've been doing really well. And you don't have the same responsibilities they do. There it was. The real reason for the call. You're asking me to give them money. Not give, she corrected quickly. Contribute. You'd be on the deed, of course. It's a smart investment. You'd even build equity. I almost laughed. Even she couldn't make it sound genuine. I'll think about it, I replied, already knowing a flat no would just spark more pressure. Of course, dear, she said. But don't wait too long. They might lose the house. And with that, the idea was planted. Over the next few days, they watered it carefully. Dad called next. He skipped the charm. Lucas, you know I've always taught you. Family supports each other. Megan and Caleb are counting on you. Aren't they both working? I asked. Why can't they save up themselves? His tone turned icy. Not everyone's had your advantages. But that was the thing. I hadn't had advantages. I'd earned what I had. I built my modest contracting business with 80-hour weeks. Lived in a shoebox apartment to save money. Skipped vacations. Drove an ancient car. Put dating on hold for years to stay focused. Megan and Caleb lived differently. Designer clothes. New SUVs. Weekend trips. Their rent was almost twice mine. Their money problems weren't bad luck. They were choices. But saying that would have caused a war. So I stayed quiet. I'll think about it, I said again. Then came the full-on pressure campaign. Sunday dinners became guilt sessions. The family group chat turned into a trap. Every message, every conversation, every meal, another reminder. Megan needs you. Family comes first. Don't let them down. My mom left voicemails where she sobbed about Megan's heartbreak, the fear of losing her dream home. No one ever asked what I wanted. No one cared that this money was supposed to be for my own home. For the stability I had worked years to achieve. 6 straight weeks of nonstop emotional pressure wore me down. Every day, my resistance cracked just a little more. Every message, every family dinner, every call, each one chipped away at what little resolve I had left. And then came the final push. Mom showed up at my place, uninvited. Eyes puffy, voice shaking. If they don't get this fresh start, Megan and Caleb might break up, she said. Do you really want to see their relationship fall apart when you have the power to stop it? I knew what this was. Emotional blackmail, plain and simple. And I still did it anyway. I transferred the money. All $108,000 of it. Almost every cent I had. I waited for that wave of relief to hit. It never did. All I felt was a cold, hollow numbness as the transaction cleared. The signing day came and went without fanfare. A quick meeting at the title office. Some signatures. A couple of nods. Megan barely whispered a thank you. Caleb didn't even look at me as I handed over the keys. There was no celebration. No meaningful appreciation. Not even a simple, we know what this means to you. As we walked to the parking lot, Megan said casually, we'll have you over once we're settled in. The offer felt weightless. Scripted. I'd like that. I lied, already knowing it would never happen. I drove home feeling hollow. My brain was screaming I'd made a mistake. My heart clung to one last desperate hope. Maybe this would finally bring us closer. Maybe they'd finally see me. Maybe I'd finally belong. I didn't. Not being invited to their housewarming party wasn't shocking. It was just confirmation of what I already knew deep down. My worth to them ended the moment my money left the account. The most brutal truths are the ones you always knew but tried not to admit. When I called the realtor to initiate the sale, there was no hesitation. Only clarity. What followed? The rage-filled phone calls, the emotional standoff at my apartment, the threats of being cut off, barely registered. They hit me like waves on stone. But I had finally found my foundation. You're not seriously going through with this, Caleb sneered during their final days at the house. He stood over the movers, barking instructions while they carefully boxed his precious electronics. You don't have the guts. I leaned in the doorway, detached, watching them pack up what used to be mine. A potential buyer was coming by at 10 the next morning. His face turned red. You're enjoying this, aren't you? You want us to suffer. This isn't about enjoyment, I said calmly. Then why, he snapped. Why force us out of our home? It was never yours, I said flatly. It was a transaction. And now the deal is done. He scoffed. You're colder than I thought. No, I replied. I just finally see things for what they are. That night, after they left, I walked through the empty house. The walls still held faint outlines where picture frames had once hung. The floor showed subtle dents where furniture had been. There were fresh scuffs. A cracked tile. A deep gouge on the kitchen counter. Caleb's parting gift, no doubt. But it didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. You can fix damage to a home. It's trust. The kind that's broken by manipulation and betrayal. That's far harder to repair. My new place is smaller. Simpler. Cheaper. But it's mine. And I know how to start over. I've done it before. Since the fallout, my family has gone silent. No birthday texts. No invitations. According to Tasha, my name isn't even mentioned anymore. And you'd think that would hurt. But it doesn't. What I feel instead is peace. That exhausting urge to be accepted, to earn my place, it's gone. What's left is lightness, stillness, freedom. Just last week, I ran into Megan at the grocery store. We locked eyes across the produce section. Something flickered in her expression. Shock, maybe. Regret, possibly. I gave a short nod and went back to picking apples. She looked away first. To some, this story might sound tragic, family torn apart over money. But that's not what happened. The money didn't break us. It just exposed what was already fractured. All those cracks had been hiding beneath polite birthday texts and Sunday dinners. Yes, I lost $108,000. But I gained something far more valuable. The truth. If I could speak to the version of me holding the pen above that contract, second-guessing everything, I'd say this. Real love doesn't require a price tag. Affection that demands payment isn't love at all. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is walk away from those who only see your worth in terms of what you can give. The hardest truth I've had to accept? Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. And sacrificing yourself doesn't guarantee appreciation. Real family, whether tied by DNA or chosen through honesty, respects your boundaries. They value your presence. They don't put strings on kindness. I lost money, but I gained clarity. And I'll never trade that for anything.